stream so that I can get the YouTube stuff set up and tweet it out. Excuse me. Though I know Mike is not here. Uploads, live, upcoming. Let's back to my studio. Your channel. Are we live? We are live. Okay, cool. So, give me just a second, everyone who may or may not be tuned in right now as I get everything set up. As you can see, Mike's not here. He ran off real quick. He just disappeared. And I'm getting everything set up. That's live. Edit. Around 30 live stream. Save. Back to the channel. Live streaming right now. Yes, with the cool little image. Nice. Nice. This is how it's supposed to work. Nice. Live streaming right now. Mute. Always important right there. Okay, so we have 2 people watching, so thanks for coming. And I'm going to start tweeting this out on Twitter and social. So we'll get started as soon as Mike gets back and some more people join. We're actually on time, so I think that's what's throwing some people off this week. Yeah. They're used to us. Oh, that's going to pop up real big for everybody. They're used to us running on, I guess, Fantasy Insider time. So, yep, that popped up real big. Live chat. Okay, here we go. I'll do it for me. Tweet. All right, there goes that. Now I gotta post this over at Reddit to make sure I check all the social boxes. And no comments. No comments for questions. Remove announcement. This is the magic. Have you joined us on a live episode yet, Kyle?
I thought not on the show. I've been in the YouTube chat once or twice.
That's what I saw. I thought I've seen your screen name before in there, so you're familiar with all the magic behind the making of the show. Okay, let's.
I feel like I should I pull that up too so I can follow the chat?
Yes, that would be good.
I do get a slick YouTube emails you when it starts.
You looks like you're looking up in the air. What do you have? Triple monitors? You just got a dual monitors up there in the air like that? Or do you got like a big TV that you game or something on?
I have about 3, and I'm hearing audio in the background. All right.
Yes.
Yeah.
You need to mute the YouTube.
There we go. And I can watch myself in 2 different places. And
nice.
Hear it really.
Now, you're going to have to tell us more about your setup once Mike gets back, because it looks like you've got a professional thing going there for when you're not moving. You're going to have to share. Please enter a URL. Oh, well, I did that backwards. My fault. It's like I never read it before. URL goes there. There we go. Submit. Flare. Yes. Announcement. Yes. Head back over to the Twitter real quick. I haven't checked to see how many people are in yet. And let's give it a quick retweet. And get the YouTube back. 8 people. 8 strong people. Left out the R in that. Hi, Shannon. Everyone's tuning in and seeing that Mike's not here, and they're like, "Forget this. Forget this. This is a waste. What have I come here for?" That shrunk over. I could totally use a third monitor. I really could. I could see how that would be great. I don't think my setup would really work though. I've got this really sweet IKEA desk where I've got some little hangers for my microphones, and it fits 2 screens just perfectly. And if I was doing a third monitor, I'd be doing like this all the time. I feel like. So I don't know, the dual screens. Unless I could have, I mean, I guess I could do like a laptop or something and try to get that to work out. I just keep doing one of these things.
That's what I'm doing. I got the camera, of course, is from my laptop, and I got 2 other screens hooked up to it, one above and one to the side.
See, I got the webcam.
Okay, yeah, that would make arrangement.
Well, I've been thinking about getting a little stand, like a flexible stand, so I could kind of maneuver because it doesn't quite work sitting on. Because my monitors, while the same size, are not the molding is not the same size. So the physical monitors themselves, it's kind of a weird setup. Bonsoir, Eric. Good evening. Bonsoir. I guess I think I probably pronounced it better that second time. Though I'm sure by now you are not surprised that I would mispronounce a word. Personally, though, I'd prefer konbanwa. Hey, Charles. Hey, Chris. Yes, definitely. It's. I could go with difficult. I don't know. I didn't want to say difficult at first. Challenging, interesting. But yeah, whenever I was setting up the first draft of my team today, there were definitely. What's up, JoJo? There were definitely some choices where I was like, ooh, interesting. And with some of the developments from round 29, I think that's going to make this an interesting week for sure. We've got the Twitter link sent. I've got it posted on Reddit, so please go out and share those links so we can get as many people joining us as possible. Don't sit on the advice. Offer yourself. Even in these final 2 weeks, we want to get as many people as we can to start joining us. Yeah, Mike, making people jealous. I could probably go see if I could pull out my my Centennial kit that I've got, my Dempsey Centennial.
I have a Centennial too. I got the one from the Gold Cup that we won, so not this one, but the one before. And I have the Bomb Pop.
Ooh. I only have the Centennial one. I've got the Centennial one. I've got a few Tottenham ones. I've got a Sporting Kansas City from when I finished in the top 50 of fantasy players a few years ago, and they were still giving out prizes for like the top 500 spots. So I've got a jersey.
That's cool.
Yeah. Well,
I have a game worn Sergio Aguero kit from Manchester City, like one of those retweet contests. Like I got Sergio.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say how'd you snag that? But retweet contest that'll work.
Stole it.
Well,
Ariel Castillo. That's
off his back. It just ran the.
Wouldn't be the first time that's happened.
All right, so we'll wait a few more minutes to see if we get anybody else join us. Thank you, everyone, for the shares on social, just to make sure everyone's around. I know we actually got started on time this week, so that probably caught a few of you off guard. But we'll give it a few more minutes just so people can join us. We're live streaming, and we've got the image back, the little backdrop that I got put together. So I'm stoked that we've got that working this week. Through no fault of her own, Sherry popping in and popping out just made it nuts last week to get that image to work. But we had the backup plan to just scratch the image and go back to the old school way. The old school way, like the way we've been doing it for 6 weeks now. The old school way, the new old school way. But we've got the image this week, and I think it looks pretty good. We'll see. Maybe some tweaks during the off season. We'll see what we have. We're sitting at 12 people right here. And there we are going. Okay. Just so you all know, Blaine did send out a picture of what his office setup is going to look like, and the promised Boba Fett poster is is ready to be hung. So I think last week he kind of teased it and did not come through for us, but we should see something pretty soon. Okay, well, we're just gonna roll with what we have. We've got a bunch of fantastic people in the chat right now. 14 people. We're gonna get started, and please do, if you haven't tweeted out the message, please share that, and we'll keep it going as we get started here. So I'm gonna hit this recording button. Let's see here. Starting the output failed. Please check the log file. Ambient codes, make sure your video drives are up to date. Okay, well, I'll have to look for that recording thing. So I'll just pull the video off of YouTube again. So, okay. You guys got the rundown?
Yep.
You guys there? Chat is ready. Be ready, everyone in chat, with your team scores. Not yet. Not yet. Because I'll prompt you for that. Press to talk. No, I don't have to press to talk anymore. I don't have to press to talk anymore, Chris. Unless these two guys are just punking me. And that's what that is. But get your team scores ready for when I ask. And then let me know some questions. I got some feedback from Twitter. And I've got that built into our rundown to make sure we mention some of the comments from people in chat. But if you have any more questions and reactions, just, hush. Just get ready for that. So, get a drink, then we'll get started. Hello and welcome to our 2019 Round 30 episode of the MLS Fantasy Insider. This episode is brought to you by Because MLS. Just when you thought you would see a 3-horse golden boot race, it's down to 2 already. Actually, brought to you by MLSFantasyBoss.com and the amazing subreddit community of r/fantasymls. I'm your host, Reed Connolly from MLSFantasyBoss.com, and tonight I'm joined by my partners in fantasy, almost tripped up on it right there, Michael Denton, and our special guest host. Blaine is not with us tonight. Our special guest host, we have Kyle Frankowicz from Patreon. First, how close did I come to pronouncing your name? And 2, welcome everyone.
Yeah, thanks. You actually, if you did as well with my last name as you, or if you did as well with MLS names as you did with mine, then you wouldn't have the reputation you did.
Wow, coming in hot, Kyle.
I'm just saying you did a great job. Is what I'm saying.
No, I appreciate it, but this is gonna be good. This is gonna be good, Mike, how are you?
I'm doing fine. You pronounce my name okay.
I do.
About
as normal. Okay, yeah. For those of you, yes, thanks. Burn coming from chat. Blaine could not be with us tonight, everyone. As you've heard a week or two ago, he just moved and is in the process of getting his internet connection set up at his new place. Also, he will be mounting the, as promised, Boba Fett photo poster behind him so you can see what's cool. You may notice behind me, I have a little on-air sign now. My wife got that for my birthday. Super surprise. You might have seen on Twitter. So had to be sure. It will likely not be in future episodes, maybe the rest of this season. But once I get that mounted above the door, then it won't be seen anymore. So I wanted to show that off as well. But we've got a good show lined up for you tonight. A great show lined up for you tonight. And a lot of that is because we're in the final double game week of the season, of the 2019 season. Can you believe it, guys? We are already wrapping this thing up. It just seems like yesterday that we were starting out with the first episode. So things are crazy. So let's just jump right into how we did last week in a very interesting double game week. So let's start out. How did your teams do, Michael?
So my team did pretty badly. I got 119, which I think was on the low end of this ranges. I just found it a really frustrating week because I came on, I was like, I want Vela because I think, and Morris because Rui Diaz are trash, and then Chris Arnaz and the bleep New York Red Bulls rotated cock, and I think Royer wasn't on there too, so I didn't pick up Royer. Went with Barrios, Fernandez, and Rui Diaz because Morris also sat. And they were duds, just like I thought they were. And I was mad at myself, and mad at my budget, and mad at fan. Blah. Let's see. Other other highlights, including getting trapped in the Tulioma thing, having FC Cincinnati player on my bench not come in because I had Parker who came in with 14, but I didn't have nearly enough Red Bulls coverage after they rotated. And that was really the ticket this week, was to have a bunch of Red Bulls.
What about you, Kyle?
Yeah, I was looking at the thing that isn't real, which is the Dream Team, and it has 5 New York Red Bulls on it, and my team had 0 New York Red Bulls on it, which meant I scored about half the points the Dream Team scored. I came in with 103, and I'm sorry, 105. And the only thing I really did right was to start 3 DC United players, all of whom did not play. That allowed me to auto-ruin Guzan, Kihi, and Ferreira, which all of Ferreira? Oh, I should make fun of myself now.
I mean, if you pronounce other names as well as you do your own.
There you go. Jay Ferreira. That shouldn't be that hard. Anyway, he did pretty good for his price point, but not good for the week. So, yeah, I think I was 3,000-ish on the week rank, which is, I think, probably about as bad as you can do while still actively trying. So, win some, you lose some.
So I will throw Mike a little bone because we did talk some about the New York Red Bulls last week, and he was not high on Royer. Of the New York Red Bulls players who are in the Dream Team, Royer is the lowest scoring of the 5, I will say. So, I mean, I'll at least give you that if that helps at all. As for myself, I got 130 points, so pretty solid double game week, I have to say. I ran with Clark as my goalkeeper, so even though there was some strange things happen with the Portland team, Clark came through very well for me as a double game week goalkeeper. I had Hollingshead, Delanea, and Robinson all on my defense, and then I had on my bench Leardom, and I made well, I'll tell you about that in a second. I had Leardom, he ended up subbing in for me coming on. I had Valeri and Ladero, sort of the biggest, well, 2 of the bigger disappointments for me this week, as I'm sure many of you will agree with. Then I had Pity and Joseph, who came in very well. And then I had Rui Diaz, who was the biggest disappointment for me this weekend. I made a change at the last minute. I had Andrasic on my bench, and when I did not see him in the starting lineup, I pivoted to Paxton Pomacall, and he ended up coming on as well for 8. And I also went with Kaku this week, so I listened to Mike. That's what it was. I should have listened to Mike's son. Is what I should have done. But no. So I had Kaku as well. Otherwise, 130 points. Pretty pleased with that, I must say. Let's go to chat real quick before we get to the head-to-heads. Scrolling back up, we've got Chris 135, week rank 318. That's awesome, Chris. Christian 145, now 39th overall. High five. Digital high five for you. That's awesome, man. Let's see here. Nano 135, number 240 overall. Shannon with 127. Jojo with 126. Eric 112, 27 points over average. Still a little bit low, but yeah, you're above the average. That's good. That's all that matters right there. So a lot of awesome scores right there. Good job. Good job, chat. Way to show. Moving over real quick to the head-to-heads, because we focused a lot on this last week, and it's getting intense. The hosts invitational head-to-head league. We were in the quarterfinal round, and boy, was it interesting. We had Sherry, who was on the show with us last week, big winner this week, 141, beating Steve McPherson from Minnesota, who had 124 points. So she had a fantastic score. She messaged me earlier in the week and was like, I'm not sure about this. I'm feeling kind of worried. And I was like, good luck. Don't worry about it. And she just blew it out of the water. So congrats to Sherry wins. And then we had the matchup, Ben Bear versus Matt Pollard from Last Word on Soccer now. And I think Matt's probably one of the comeback stories of the year. Would you say so, Mike? He really struggled last season, but he's beaten the Bear 113 to 118. Yeah. That's amazing. Makes it to the semis.
Anytime you can put down the Bear in a key situation.
Our fourth game was Jason Wiskovich, the former co-host emeritus. He'll be back sometime with us. Beats Older Goaler, one of our just powerhouse Discord members right there, 129 to 119, another close. And I saved this one because this was my game, and it was a nail biter the whole way. Every time I kept checking my lineup, maybe I was up by a couple, maybe Ryan was up by a couple, or we were just dead even. But Ryan Anderson at MLS Fantasy Stats and I went head to head, and I ended up winning 130 to 123. We had a few differential picks through there. But it was wild. It was a wild game. So that has set up a semi-finals match. Sherry is going up against Matt Pollard, which will be epic. And then an MLS Fantasy Insider Classic Derby, we have Jason Wiskovich versus myself, and it's gonna be interesting for this final double game week. It'll be a good time. So congrats to everyone. Thanks everyone who has been playing in our league so far this year. It's been awesome. Also, don't want to not mention the Patreon League. Skiles is still leading with a record of 12-1-0 right now. Got that key win last week, but Seagraves is right behind him, 11-1-1. So this is coming down to the last couple of games for the Patreon head-to-head league. Or, sorry, the Patreon. I'm getting them all mixed up. The Patreon head-to-head league, not invitational, unless you count having to be a Patreon member. We'll talk about that later. But it's intense.
You're all invited to be. Yeah.
Yes, you're all invited. You just have to subscribe. And throw some cash in and help contribute to this awesome project that we have going on. But we'll let Kyle mention some more about that in a few minutes. What we're here to talk about right now is round 29, what we learned, and getting ready for this final double game week. So, guys, I'm going to let you start by talking about your most surprising moments and your most important fantasy takeaways, and then we're going to go to chat. So everybody in chat, be ready with those same questions because we want to know what you have to say. That's really what we love most about this show and this new format, and what we hope you all who are participating now and what you all who are listening later on the podcast like is we want to interact with you all and answer the questions that you have. So we'll give you our thoughts, then we'll hear your thoughts. So let's start out. We'll let Mike ease everything in to this, Kyle. I know you've joined us a few times in chat before, but Mike, so what were your most surprising moments from this very fun double game week?
I think probably the biggest was Joseph Martinez going down with his leg, ankle, knee injury, whatever that was. I don't know if it's just a surprise or just a shock, and it's just a big impact. They spent like 20 minutes talking about it in extra time today. It's going to be the most important story going into the Eastern Conference. It's really going to change the way this week looks for sure. After that, it's what you have written down. But for me, it's mostly Portland getting no goals with 2 home. The Red Bulls kind of came into this week struggling, and then to pull off 2 wins, I think was shocking. For the Red Bulls to get 2 clean sheets was shocking. Pretty much everything related to that. I know you had written down that Seattle getting no goals was also shocking. With Ladero being hurt on the tail end of that, it's not quite as shocking to me. It's still mind blowing. Kind of the story of this was a lot of teams outside of the Red Bulls having high pressure games and just joking away off. Even Atlanta barely getting past San Jose for that critical 3 points. Philly dropping a bad one to the Reds. Most of the teams on the playoff bubble as a big talking point today. Dropping points, Dallas, San Jose, Orlando, New England. The list goes on and on. We got a few clinches, but most of them backed into it. Most of them happened while I was sleeping. So, yeah, it was just kind of a weird round, especially for the double game week. All of the big players just did absolutely nothing, except for, Pity and Joseph Martinez. And even that was kind of underwhelming for what we thought they would do.
Kyle, what about you?
Yeah, I would say the thing that surprised me most about this week, maybe not fantasy related, but MLS related, is the fact that nobody seems to want to be in the playoffs in the West, I guess. It's shocking to me that there's I'm looking at the standings right now, and there's 6 points in between 2nd and 8th. And I love seeing the Timbers outside on the wrong side of the red line, but it's I mean, I feel like they're trying really hard to stay down there, and Seattle's not looking much better. It's mind blowing to me that it's this tight. On the flip side, like it's pretty cool that the last 2 weeks and the last 2 or 3 games, depending on the team, all really matter. It's nice to have stakes. I think in other formats around the world, these will be effectively dead games, right? If, you got a 12th
Yeah.
place playing a 10th place team, nobody cares. In this context, there's still something to play for. It's neat.
Yeah, for sure. For sure, definitely.
Yeah.
They mentioned some of that on, I guess, Extra Time a couple weeks ago, how they were talking about this transition maybe to the Nations League cups and everything that they have going on could change the way the playoffs work with having a true supporter shield and then moving away. But that is something I do love about our playoff structure. I knew you would. I knew you would.
Hate that. I hate it. And
But-
I hate the fact they wasted 15 minutes of extra time talking about this stupid fantasy booking instead of MLS play. Oh my god.
But that's just something I do
Talk
love
about
about
the
our
actual-
playoff structure. I love that we do have these games between these teams who are fighting for that red line, even though I'm sure we all may have difference of opinions of how many teams should be making it to a playoff, or how maybe these final games may matter more in some sense than some of the early games. But I love that some of these games matter, and that's why I put this comment in here. It came from @GoodKidDadCity on Twitter, and he said that the two teams that surprised him the most were Portland and Seattle, because in the midst of a playoff race, that they could play 4 games for a combined total of 0 goals, and it just hadn't sunk in. Like, I hadn't really let that information sink into me until I read it from him, and I was like, wow, that is nuts. We were just promised, not really promised, but we just expected Portland to do better with the note from chat, 49 shots fired off with no goals either from the Portland game. But we just expected Portland to do well with this back-ended home schedule. We almost expected Seattle to do well too, just based on history of it's like, well, it's the second quarter of the season. Let's get this thing going and finish it up just like we usually do. So definitely some big things there. The number of clean sheets were surprising, particularly for me. FC Cincinnati's clean sheet. Just did not see that coming, so kudos to the several people who I saw and the others I'm sure who were listening who had an FC Cincinnati player on their bench as a switcheroo option. You got some good points this week. I'm happy. I'm happy about that.
I want to
For
add
sure.
something on FC Cincinnati. They should have beaten Atlanta. If you watch that game, like they were the better team until Joseph
Yeah,
Martinez
they were.
took a chance at nothing to score. And the expected goals backs that up. Honestly, Atlanta looked awful in both of their games. I mean, they won them both, so who cares? But I was kind of surprised that they just didn't dominate both of the teams they played. San Jose losing Espinoza, so I mean, you would have thought that would have been a rout, and then they could have taken off Joseph Martinez, but that wasn't the case, and now they're not going to have Joseph until maybe round 2 of the play.
Some comments from chat. Other people are agreeing about the number of 0-0 clean sheets that we have. Portland's offense or lack thereof, as Chris says. Another big comment. I think a lot of people were leaning more on Portland, and that's maybe that was just our fault, like expecting more than what we've seen the results have, because they've had a few rough results as well. TFC, I've seen the comment right there. Christian comes in, TFC, and yeah, I've got that on here. LAFC versus Toronto, 1-1 draw. I am surprised by that, because I think we expected that to be a blowout from LAFC, especially since Vela did play back in the fray. But yeah, a 1-1 draw. So congrats to Toronto for holding that out. Makes things very interesting, to say the least. But that was definitely a big surprising moment for me as well. Let's move on to... Oh, go ahead.
I wanted to ask, so LAFC, it seems like nobody in the West is, all of a sudden, everybody's just kind of taken a month off. I'm remembering LAFC was going to have, set the record again, and now they have 3 games, and they're sitting on 65 points. I just kind of assumed in August that they were going to break 70, and it wasn't going to be close. But now they actually might not do as well as 2 teams last year, after all the praise they got through the summer. Deservedly so, but...
Ooh, that's nice.
yeah, it's weird that nobody in the West, I guess they all thought that I have no idea what's going on there, but nobody seems to be thirsting for it. So
Yeah,
wide open.
LAFC is winless in 5, and I mean, part of that is Vela's injury, but he's back. I really think them losing to the Galaxy has had like a really big effect, both on their own
Yeah.
mindset and like the mindset of because they just. I think everyone's like, you know what, they're vulnerable. I don't care how many points they have. They can be beaten. If the Galaxy can beat them, it's as bad as they're anybody can beat them. So teams are coming in there with confidence, and LAC just doesn't look like they have that confidence. It
Do we
would
think?
like they could be knocked out in with the way they're playing right
Do we
now. I mean,
think any of
they're
it is that they've made it so they're feeling like they don't have to put as much just emphasis?
I mean,
maybe, but I mean
I
that's a
go back
Bob.
and forth on that, right?
I mean, it's hard to
it would
say
make
that
a lot of
professional
sense.
athletes.
Well, I mean, in a playoff structure, it makes sense to kind of leave some gas in the tank for the postseason. But the other flip side is you lose your momentum, you lose your
Yeah.
kind of patterns of play, and maybe that stuff is hard to maintain over the course of 34 games, and then also the playoffs. But it's certainly something, these machines aren't tuned to run 34 plus extra.
Well, let's move on to some of the fantasy takeaways that we had from this round. If you guys are in chat, go ahead and start letting us hear your takeaways. Kyle, I'll let you start this one out.
Fantasy takeaways.
Yep.
Um,
Well, any if you want to.
Don't start Seattle or Portland. I would say penetrating insight there. Yeah, I had Morris too. I actually one of the things that I've been thinking about is less about the game and more about how I play it, and that is these double game weeks. On the West Coast mean you got to be looking at your lineups at like 4 p.m., which if you're working a professional 9 to 5, that's a bit of a problem. And I need to think about that more because, for example, I tried to tweak some stuff. I didn't press save, and so Morris was in my starting 11, and I didn't mean for that to happen. He was in a rough draft that I never came back to. So I think especially with this next one, like I'm going to make sure that I'm looking at the schedule for this Wednesday. New York City and Minnesota are the quote early games for the West Coast at 4 and 5. I'm going to make sure that those people are either walk-on starters or they're on my bench, just because my work day on Wednesday is pretty busy, and I don't want to have to double check that. I've blown a lot of weeks this year thinking that I was going to come back to it, and then just life gets in the way. So I don't know. That's a bit of both.
Yeah, no, that's a real good point. I think the time zone is definitely a unique element. Well, not unique, I know, but a lot of people are just used to watching sort of fantasy Premier or just Premier League and playing fantasy there, and the time zone is not an issue there. So it's definitely for the larger country, it's definitely something that we do have to contend with, and it highlights just the importance of looking at those times in general, because oftentimes, especially when you're working with a switcheroo, that's the key element, especially on these double game weeks for, okay, this guy's playing the 8 o'clock game that's going to wrap things up about 10 o'clock, so the 10:30 games are the games I'm going to have to look at for my switch options, or those are going to be the safe bets, or I'm going to have to come back earlier and make a gut call off of maybe only 75 minutes of the game. So, yeah, time is so important, definitely for this game. Mike, what about you?
My takeaway is more just trying to figure out what Atlanta's going to do without Joseph Martinez. I'm wondering if Pity Martinez becomes more valuable as a result, or whether you just kind of slough all Atlanta defenders or excuse me, Atlanta attackers. I don't really have a decision on that yet, but that's something I'm trying to work through. I do agree with Kyle. I'm not picking up any Portland or Seattle. Well, I say I'm not picking up any Portland. I might be forced to. It's still cheap. I think maybe the other takeaway is we also got a draw and rotated heavily. So I'm really interested in them for this coming week because everyone's going to be fresh, all their key players. So that's something I'm really looking at. Other than that, it's just, weird games. But it's the kind of that time of the season. You have some teams that are like, all right, we're shutting people down because we're pretty sure we're going to make the playoffs. So we're just going to kind of get some rests in just to make sure they're good to go. And then, some teams like fighting crazy, like Dallas in against New York City. They were throwing elbows, desperate to try to get through the points. It's just that time of year where it's a lot harder to predict what's going to happen because you don't know how different teams are going to approach different teams.
Yeah, so you mentioned a couple of good names right there with Pity Martinez, or one good name there, Pity Martinez. I think that also brings the name to mind of many other people is, well, maybe Gressel is going to be scoring well here, but you overlooked Villalba. And so, I mean, he got an assist last week in that second game. I think if you are really looking for that coverage, that Villalba is another name that you could put higher on your list as a takeaway from the potential injury right there.
That was the conversation on Extra Time, was whether or not Villalba comes in and takes Joseph Martinez's spot. Barco is also coming back, or whether Pity Martinez kind of moves up, if that's what I understand. So maybe an Atlanta fan can kind of give us a little bit more direction to what's the most likely scenario. But it'll be really interesting to see what they do. I mean, this next game is the biggest game for them because if they lose this game, they're pretty much locked into. Well, I mean, maybe they're locked in third place depending on what Philly does. But I mean, more than likely they're second and third place, and which they get.
Yeah. So for me, I'm going to add in right here important takeaways. Mostly the discussion I wanted to have is we had a lot of conversation last week about Royer over Kaku. And the important takeaway for me was it was Royer who came away with more points this week. But I believe, Mike, you were talking about how the rotation was likely for Royer, and we did see that. Does that...
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and I mean, Royer came on late and got a goal, kind of a garbage time goal in the game against Philadelphia. I mean, he's a good player, but I mean, that's the issue, is that he gets rotated.
So this does not impact you at all?
No, I mean, it's the same problems that we've had all year with Chris Arnes and his midfield. You want them because they're cheap, but the reason that they're cheap is because Chris Arnes keeps rotating and he keeps popping up the subs. I mean, with the way the point structure has been one of the problems I've had is that I have a lot of guys who get rotated in that second game, and then I lose tons of value because they get put up on his. And the system is really heavily designed, price-wise, to punish that substitution pin. So, we'll see what Ben does with that next year. But I mean, that's been the problem for the New York Red all year. Outside of their back, they just rotate really heavily.
A couple of comments in chat. We've got from Charles saying, finally, I took Rotowski. So congrats there. He had a good score. I think 17 points is what came there. And then we got a comment here from Ryan Anderson, who may or may not be our Minnesota Ryan Anderson. We have two Ryan Andersons. But we got Coach said Vasquez has a possibility of starting in Joseph's spot down in Atlanta. So keep an eye on that lineup if you're looking for an Atlanta forward this week, definitely. For myself, the other one, just the one I put on here, New England shine seems to have worn off. Maybe people have gotten to that point already, but they're a double game week team this week. So we've talked about Portland, we've talked about New England, so I wanted to make sure I mentioned them as well. That's one of my takeaways. It's tempered my desire to look for New England coverage going into this round. Other comments I've seen from members in chat on Twitter. Here we go. That's our fantasy stats, Ryan. Welcome, fantasy stats, Ryan. I think we accidentally credited you being here inappropriately a few weeks ago, so I just wanted to be sure. On Twitter, some comments from people who are with us in chat. Sometimes tonight, not tonight, but people, important takeaways, avoid Seattle attackers. Sorry, Kyle, in quotes there. Boy, did they let me down. Do you have a comment about what's wrong in Seattle?
Honestly, I don't. I want to blame injuries because that's always the convenient thing to do. But to be honest, there have been two players that have joined the team in the summer window, and neither of them have done too much. Luis Silva and the name of the holding midfielder, who of course I can't remember right now. Neither of them have really shown much to. Certainly, we needed more from them, and hopefully they'll get integrated in time for the playoffs. But I don't know. I'm feeling fairly pessimistic about unless we get a home game, then we might win the first one, and then after that, it's whoever goes into the LAFC grinder, presumably if they get back on pace. And then that I'm a little dejected. So.
Chat, of course, and Twitter was also commenting about Valeri. Just the two most common comments this week were Seattle and Portland by far. Sherry made a great comment, and she said her most important takeaway was to have a plan for replacing or keeping non-starters. And I thought that was a fantastic take to have. She scored very well in the head-to-head this week, and I did that myself. I had the plan that if Andrasic wasn't going to start, then I was going to get another Dallas player. I hadn't really settled on that, but I was looking at Dallas to see what was going on. So for me, it was Paxton Pomykal. I had enough money left in my budget to pivot to that. Did you two guys have plans in place? And what about chat? Did you all have a plan for a pivot in place going into this last round?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of had an idea of what I would do. I mean, the problem is my plan was just not very good because whenever Lukaku and Boyer went to start, I pivoted away from the Red Bulls and then had to bring in Fernandez, had to dump Blah and bring in Fernandez. Now, the one I really wasn't expecting was Morris not to start, but I mean, that was a pretty easy switch to Rui Diaz anyway, because I had already done Vela. I mean, I had kind of an idea of what to do. Now I'll be a little dicier because I'm really tight on it. We'll get into that.
Kyle.
Yeah. I again, kind of not too far from Mike. I had a great plan and then I changed it, and my changing of that plan was a really bad idea. I had no money left, so I had 3 different DCU players at $4, and all of them I kind of intended to see what Kihi and Villafana and Ferreira were going to do, but when I saw that none of them did too well, or I had two switcheroos, and Kihi did well with the clean sheet, but Ferreira wasn't worth keeping. I didn't have enough money to replace him, so ended up his score passed on anyway. Oh well.
It's funny you mentioned budget. That was my final other topic here before we moved on to letting you talk about Patreon. Last week we had some conversations about... Oh, we lost your video, Kyle. We had some conversations about the importance of budget, and now you're back. And we had sort of settled on the specific conversation was how much money do I need to leave or can I leave in my bank? Wrote a little bit of an article that touched on some of that last week as well for the fantasy newsletter through MLS Soccer. And we had some different opinions of by this point of the year, you're probably pushing 130 million, so you could be okay to leave money in the bank. But as Ryan and I found out, a comment he made to me was he had run out of money and for making some of the selections that he wanted to do in our head-to-head. And then Kyle's here talking about how he's run out of money, and that really impacts you. And so it just blew my mind, and that this point of the year that that money would still be that big of a deal. And I assume it's just because the players are still going up. And Ryan's big takeaway that he shared on Twitter was that you need to budget build at least longer than he did. So I don't know how long you were budget building, Ryan, but Mike is one of our main gurus in budget building. So
Not this year.
Well, you understand the process, man. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, this year was really tough to do budget building because you had the double game leagues, and and like I said before, I went hard on double game league guys and got burned a lot, and like those suck. Knock it down. Like I'm at like you were talking about 130. I'm at 120, or I guess maybe a little bit over 123. I guess it's 123.6. And I mean, yeah, I mean, I mean, generally my defender picks have been pretty this year, and that's kind of kept me from bad overall scores, and it's also hurt as far as the budget prices. If you can nail the defenders, that's I think is one of the easiest ways to get prices because they start off lower and go higher. And I mean, like right now, like honestly, like that was the toughest area to pick. So many of the defenders on the good teams have just ballooned so high, even with the midseason reset. It's unreal. I mean, multiple defenders are like in the 7-8 range, which I don't think we had as many players last year in so high. And last year was pretty much just Graham Zeus, he was crazy, and then everyone else was like a tier below him. They were still generally
Hedges, that kind of thing. Yeah.
I mean, this year, like the Hollingshead's in that same category, but I mean, there's a lot of other players who are super expensive.
Yeah, it's been wild.
And I mean, I think also Vela is a huge, because I mean he's 15 million, and that just saps your budget really really quick.
And this, I had a very civil conversation, short conversation about FPL, MLS, Fantasy MLS on Twitter today, and again, it focusing on the limited transfers being the strategic part of this game. But I mean, with the way this budget situation is working, you mentioning that right there, Mike, it's like, do you want to drop 15 million on Vela? I mean, that's going to eat so much of your budget up at this, especially this point in the season when you're looking at defenders who are 7 to 9 million in situations like that. So I think that gets overlooked a lot by people who want to disregard the strategy from MLS just because you have unlimited transfers. That there is a budget management element to this game that can be very important, because you can just copy the teams that we talk about. You can just copy the team that gets posted, or pick the top picks that Skylar puts out on his articles each week and just go for those players. But there's always someone budget who's doing well. There's always the New York Red Bulls who are going to come in here and with their rotation are going to get someone going well. There's always Shabilko or one of these low-cost players who are going to come in there and get a great game. So the ability to try to identify that, find the budgets, the great diamonds in the rough, that's where the big, not the big, but one of the big strategic elements is still in this game. So I guess in some ways we're going back a little bit on what we were talking about last week, is don't necessarily leave money on your budget, but have a plan. Have that pivot plan in place, and don't just leave money on your budget in your bank because you can. Just consider each of those choices to make sure you've really found the guys that you like for each spot that have the best point scoring potential. So maybe that's just generic advice, but I think it's something that it really hit home this week for some people.
I'll also throw out, I think it's easier to have like a big budget on a single game week, where you can kind of use it more towards switcheroos and have a plan. Double game week's a little harder unless you really have an idea of if this guy doesn't do. I know this late game is going to be great. I mean, you could have done that with Vela this time, but with so many of the double game week teams also playing on, it wasn't the easiest thing this time. I mean, I don't know if it's going to really work this week, but that's another scenario where that would make sense. So basically, that's not really going to happen anymore, because the last week of the season is a single game weekend. They all so that maybe in the future, if this system is kept.
Yeah, I remember in the first half of this season, which was a different season, the spring season. I focused more on building a budget, and I finished way stronger than I did. The fall season, there were fewer games, so I did that pivot a little sooner than, in retrospect, I probably should have. I'm at 220 or 125 right now, and I'm trying to put together a lineup to talk about tonight, and I got like $7 to fill 3 roster spots. So we'll see how that works.
That's
that'll be
interesting.
fun. And to Mike's point, the fact that there are double game weeks makes it, there's usually one good game, one bad game, and you say, all right, well, I'm going to buy the good game and then get the bad game as extra, and that tends to justify the spendier players as well. So to your you could usually get by. You'll find the 4.5 mil defender playing at home against FCC. And on a single game week, that makes sense. But on a double game week, that almost never makes sense, because that's the player that's likely going to get rotated. Or there's somebody you can get 180 out of if you pay just a little bit extra, and then all of a sudden your bench is. So it's I'm not the first person to describe this struggle, but it would be nice maybe for those data folks out there to kind of crunch some numbers and get a better idea of what, maybe what week, maybe like 2/5 of the way through the season is when you should pivot. There might be a sweet spot there that I don't know. I certainly haven't.
Oh, that would be cool. That'd be cool. If it makes you feel any better, I'm pushing 129, and my first draft of my team, I looked up, and after I was finished, I was like, 14 million in the hole. Okay, well let's rework this. So doesn't matter what your budget is.
Almost one Vela, yeah.
That's right. Yeah, I'm a Vela in the hole. Let's see. All right. Thank you so much for that. Let's move on to our housekeeping now. This is, as we've said, the final double game week of 2019. A bunch of teams are on a double game week. New York City FC, Atlanta with a double away game, Minnesota with a double home game, Sporting Kansas City, Real Salt Lake with a double home game, LA Galaxy, LAFC, Houston with a double away game, Portland, New England, San Jose with a double home game, and Philadelphia with a double away game. So a whole mess of teams. I don't think we'll see any single game week players in lineups this week. I'd be shocked if we do. A lot of great options right here. Which teams are on a bye? No teams are on a bye because everyone's playing and it's just going to be a madhouse. A little update from 538 about the teams who have clinched a spot, who have been eliminated, and who are on the bubble, if that helps with your decision making, because as we saw this week, I think it does play heavily into these final rounds. DC has clinched, New York City FC, New York Red Bulls, Toronto. Congrats to JoJo, there you go. LAFC, Atlanta, and Philadelphia are all the teams who have officially clinched a spot in the playoffs. There are still only 2 teams who have been eliminated 100% from the playoffs, and that is FC Cincinnati and Vancouver. And then finally, teams who are on the bubble, and that is, as I'm selecting it, teams with less than a 10% chance of making the playoffs. We have Montreal, which that should be probably a shocker in and of itself, which is what we thought was going to happen for Montreal this year. But Montreal, Colorado, Houston, Columbus, Sporting Kansas City, and Orlando are all right there on the bubble. So probably none of those teams are going to make it.
Rapid staying in contention this long. That's amazing.
That is. I mean, yeah, they've had a great season. San Jose's had a great season. Montreal's season has been nuts. Portland's has been nuts. New England's been an up and down story.
Had a great season since May.
Well, that's so no. I mean, I'll give them a little bit more. They had maybe not a great season, but they've had high points. They've had a lot of high points throughout the year. I mean, when you're looking at some of the offense, they have. I'm just being nice. But Mike, let's just go over to the housekeeping right now and let you talk about that before we let Kyle talk about Patreon.
All right. As I just checked, disciplinary summary has been updated. Sorry, guys. Injuries and red cards. There's a bunch for New York City. Tinnerholm left with what looked like a concussion. I wouldn't expect him to play. Keaton Parks also left with an injury, but no updates been given yet. On the plus side for the Pigeons, Hebert is supposed to come back, but he's supposed to come back on the bench for Atlanta, maybe. And then kind of one of those asterisks here. If New York City does win and Philadelphia drops points, New York City would clinch their first game. And their second games at that point, as a New York City fan, I want all of our good players placed into a lockbox, close up the lockbox, and lock the lockbox away into the playoffs. So just kind of a word of warning for any New York City. For that, let's see. Red cards, Espinoza, Wondolowski, Almeida. So 2 San Jose players and 1 coach. San Jose. Beasler for SKC. Also sent. There was a bunch of rotations, but not a whole lot of injuries that I could tell, or at least they claimed they were rotations and weren't injuries. We'll see. Except for Ladero, who said that there was an injury, but I haven't seen the timetable. And the only disciplinary notes I will throw out there is Ring for New York City is back on warning. Let's see. Tati Castellanos is on warning. Sean Johnson is on warning. Zimmerman, K, and Blessing were on warning. And again, some of these players could have been suspended, but I just didn't have the time because I had a business trip during most of the day. And let's see if there's any other big names that you want to avoid. Carlos Heel is on warning, so that's a big one. Yeah, I think those are all the players that you would. So, yeah, that's a way to look. I don't know of any other red cards unless I missed some. Give it to me in chat.
Nice.
Oh,
Yeah.
and yes, the Canadians want me to make sure that the championship or the Voyagers is this Wednesday or Tuesday. I'm not. I know it's mid. It will be played at Toronto. Montreal goes in that with a 1-0 lead, so that'll be an interesting game. I don't think it's actually able for us in the States to see. Maybe I'm wrong about that, unless you use various ways on the internet.
Various ways.
Leave that
Oh
to
my
you.
gosh. Oh my
The ways
gosh.
of the internet.
Oh my gosh. And of course, Christian
The
does
dark
want us to
webs.
point out that both Montreal and Toronto could be considered to be on a double game week this week because of that Canadian Voyageurs Cup Championship game. However, the only important note from that is they get all of the worst parts of a double game week and none of the benefits of a game week. So no extra points for us, but potential tired legs.
And yes, Jojo, I am sure, and I just did refresh the. It has not been updated yet. The disciplinary summary, it hasn't been updated. Because MLS just, I don't know how else to say it. I just don't.
All right, so before we get to our Round 30 preview, as always, when we have one of our amazing Patreon guests with us, we give them a moment to talk about why they are a patron and what they get out of this fantastic community. So this week, it's Kyle. So Kyle, share with us, there we go, a little bit about yourself. For those of you who are listening to the podcast, Kyle has a sweet setup with his microphone here, which makes me think he has some experience podcasting or streaming or something that I want to hear more about. And he's also got a wicked sweet poster behind him with that's right, Casey Keller pictured prominently as the goalkeeper there from a classic Seattle Sounders. So, Kyle, let us know a little bit about yourself, your fantasy history, and why you choose to be a Patreon supporter.
Yeah, well, I'm. Thanks for having me. This is one of the things I've been most excited about this whole season. Yeah, I've been doing. I live in Tacoma, Sounders supporter, and been doing fantasy. My fellow season ticket holders and I got into it together about 5 years ago, and back when the valuation of the players was based on people trading them in and out, and you had to like really plan out 2 months worth of transfers because you got two free, and then it would
DPL system.
charge you. Oh man, there are pros and cons, but I did enjoy that part of it, the value. Anyway, the reason I'm a supporter is I really enjoy what you guys are doing here. I think it's a great project, and I think it fills a need, right? And when I to draw an analog to NFL. I never really watched NFL until one of my high school buddies decided to, loop me into a fantasy team. And all of a sudden I'm like listening to 5 different podcasts, and there's a huge, ecosystem of fantasy American football. And really this is it right now for fantasy MLS. And I think you guys do great work. So I wanted to be a part of it. It's good content. It's a really good community. I love the Discord. One of my favorite things to do is during the regular season is on this setup that you were describing. I have more screens than I should, and I'll have one stream. I'll be playing a Rim World on one screen and then streaming 2 games with MLS or ESPN Plus on the other, and watching the Discord while people are sending the eyes emojis because all my streams are a little behind. It's just that's so much fun. That's so much fun, and really getting into fantasy is how you get into understanding all the rest of the teams, right? Like you get to know the third string defender on team Minnesota, or you'll figure out that Pogba plays sometimes but not all the time, but in a double game week he's worth it. I don't know. Also, the other Pogba. So that's cool. And it just makes all the games a bit more interesting. Who's playing and who's good, who's on a streak, that kind of. So yeah, that's why I'm a supporter. I think it's I think it fills a void, and I think MLS is really. I think Mike is beating the drum hardest on this. That MLS is really missing an opportunity by not investing in this kind of thing. So I think as members of this community, it's up to us to build it, and I'm glad to be a part of it.
We are super excited to have you as a member of the community, one of our top Patreon supporters, and to have you join us tonight. So even though before the show got started, Kyle we were messaging and email getting things ready. He was like, "I wish I did better this week before I'm coming on the show." It's such a bummer.
Yeah, of course. Like
I hear
worst
that.
week in months.
That is
One
one
I have
of
to
the
talk about.
most common comments whenever we have a guest on the show. They're always like, "Man, I wish I did better last week before I come onto the show." So, but
Really amp the effort stuff, yeah.
but hey, no, we're happy to have you here, and as I always say, one of the, if not the most important, just element of this show is just talking about the ideas and getting the information out there, so that you listeners, you in chat, can hear what people are thinking about to process yourself. I mean, we are not trying to tell you who to pick. Sometimes it may come across that way, but we're not trying to tell you who you need to pick. We're just trying to share information, share thought process that you may not have thought about before, so that you can make the best, that's a horrible sentence, you can make the best educated selections for building the fantasy team that you think is going to do the best this round, and that you have fun while you're doing it. So that's what our hope is. So that being said, and thank you, JoJo, that was very well said by Kyle. Let's move on to our round 30 preview, final double game week of the year, the penultimate round of the season, round 30. Let's start by talking about keepers, defenders, and clean sheets. Michael, who are you looking at?
All right, so I'm gonna kind of put this as a disclaimer. Right now, I have Vela in my, and I have a really bit of a budget crunch, so I kind of had to make the numbers work on the defensive end. So right now, I have Vega. I'm not really confident in that, especially with Espinoza out for San Jose, but I'm still kind of trying to tinker with that. That's what I'm going with right now. I mean, at least San Jose does have 2 home games. We'll see. Then I have Eric Miller from New York City. I mentioned Tinnerholm as a concussion. I'm assuming he's going to miss both games, and his substitute is going to be Miller's $4 million. New York City doesn't have a home game against Joseph Martinez, Atlanta United, and then they play New England, which we mentioned earlier has been having a little bit of struggles. So I think it's a good shout, at least on the bench. And then also on my bench is Taloma, because I have an addiction. I have a problem. He's cheap, and I keep putting him on my team. He's not going to do well. I already know I needed to have something as a switcheroo, so I put him on my team. If I drop Vela, I will have more money and can do something. The idea of better is RSL and Philly. Those are where I really like this. I have Silva from RSL and Gaddis from Philly. I would really like to upgrade both of those players, but that's what RSL has 2 home games, and then Gaddis will be playing a San Jose again without Espinoza and without Wondolowski. So even though they're on the road, that's not a bad. And then they go to Columbus, who we know has been having trouble scoring goals, which is why, since he got a clean sheet this past. So I think Philly is kind of a sneaky defensive pick this week. Plus, I think we're going to be pretty confident that they will be going hard, because we know that they don't want to go that time. So even if they miss out on the top spot, I can feel pretty confident that they won't have any massive rotations for either of these.
Kyle.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks for the Miller tip. That's why I listen to the podcast. I'm like, who are the cheap people that I don't know about? So yeah, Miller's in my lineup now. That's great.
Maybe I should have kept that to myself.
Too late. So for keepers, as Mike said, I think Minnesota with the double home game and playing SKC, who is already out of it, and
That's
LAFC, who are already into it. There's nothing that either of their opponents can do, and there's everything to play for Minnesota. So I'm leaning more towards their defense than their offense, but we'll see. But definitely Manone. He's my starting keeper. I don't think I'll have a budget for a keeperoo. We will see, but I'm not expecting to. I would probably have to swing Vela, and that would require dumping the other Vela. Wait, are there 2 Velas? Am I making things up? Who's the keeper for?
Well, no wonder you have no money. You've doubled
Vega.
Vela.
I was off by 1 letter. So yeah, that's my situation at goalkeeper. For defense, I have Herrera with RSL. Metzner, I think he's going to be money well spent, but if I end up cutting corners, he's probably the first. And the other one is an LA Galaxy defender. Take your pick. They're all roughly 5 mil and roughly not great, but they are going to get a double game week, and they're playing Vancouver at home, so that should be a slam dunk, clean sheet. And yeah, that's what I'm thinking about right now.
Yeah, that's a great look at for LA Galaxy. That's definitely one of those situations where, like you said, I'm banking on one good game, and that second game is just all extra. But in this case, the extra is the first game, and the game you're banking on is the second one. So yeah, no, that's not a bad pick at all for LA Galaxy this week. Usually, I'm not super high on their players. I also like Metanera and Herrera. I think you guys have done a good job pointing those out. And Mike, you had some great little picks there as well for those budget guys, and I could not agree more about Philadelphia having some good budget options. I don't know if I'd go with a defender. I mean, I like the idea maybe a defensive midfielder or some of their offensive guys, but that's just me being so afraid of a double away game. Yeah, for that. But I still agree that I think Philadelphia have some good options this week, and that very same motivation.
I mean, Gaddis is not my only Philly pick, so.
Sure. Oh, no. I expect to hear more. I'm just saying, for me, my Philly, the options from Philly I would go to and that I did consider didn't go back to defense. So you guys have picked up a lot. I'm still considering an Atlanta player, maybe Escobar, someone cheap on the back. I think Valentine did play for Portland last week if you're still looking for some more budget guys, but I don't know if people really want to go with Portland. I think if you're looking for budget and you were looking at a Portland player, I think Miller is a better option for that. So I think you guys have covered a lot of it. I am attempting currently a keeperoo this week, and it is with Manone and Vega. It's just the easiest way. I guess the easiest way is to go with New York City FC, but I still do worry a little bit about Atlanta. What could happen, like you were saying earlier, Mike, if they do have Barco and Pity and all these guys come out just swinging, they could still have some stuff go back. And New York's missing some people. I mean, Tinnerholm being gone is pretty big hit in my opinion. So I'm not 100% on the clean sheet, so I don't want to risk the keeper there. Manone's been good. Sporting Kansas City's been struggling. They might see some rotation, so I think he's got a good shot at the clean sheet. He's starting on my bench for getting that set up. And then this is where the time element comes in. That's an 8 o'clock game, anticipated to be over around 10 o'clock. That leaves the 10:30 games and the 11 o'clock game ready to go. I like San Jose. They have some good history with defense, and Vegas cheap. Let's just be honest. That's it. He's a 6.1 starter. So just like at the beginning of the year, I can talk him up all I want about. Right, I can talk it up all about like how there have been some upside with the defense and they've been pretty solid and they even missed a couple. But no, he's cheap. That's really what it comes down to. Is he is cheap and Philly's on the road, and so it's a little bit better odds. But that's if Manone doesn't get a good score, and if he has, then he's just going to go, and it'll be all good from there. Extra money in the bank. Let's go to chat real quick, see who they're looking about here. Jojo really likes the Miller tip right there, Mike, so he appreciates that. Ryan Anderson says Bingham because he's cheap, and he actually happens to be my number one keeper in my stats. So there's another tip for LA. Again, looking at that Vancouver, who is out of the picture. So Bingham is another excellent keeper option people could look at. And then we have Christian who agrees Bingham in the net. So if you did want to go with Bingham on your team, you could make that work if you did a Bingham Vega keeperoo. You could swing that right there. You could still do it with Manone because that's a 9:30 game. Right. Right, you'd have to end it early and really decide. So
roll the dice for 20 minutes. That's better than
you
rolling the dice for 90.
You really would. But yeah, so you could easily do a keeperoo with Bingham Vega, no problem, and a little bit more risky with Manone.
And Jojo, it seems like you're asking what the Miller tip was. It's that Eric Miller, who's a $4 million dollar defender for New York City, is probably going to get the start both times for right back because Tinnerholm looked like he got a concussion, so I would expect he's going to miss both.
So apologies, I misread that. Let's move on to midfielders, Mike.
All right, so I have 5 midfielders.
Ooh.
I went. They're pretty heavy, so that's what the big crunch on my budget was. So I have Montero. Again, I think Philly, even though they're on the road, I think they're two pretty good matchups with the San Jose without some key players due to suspension and without their coach. I know the coach will be in the stands being obnoxious with his transit, but I still think it's a big difference.
Those pictures on Twitter were amazing, by the way. I don't know if you guys saw them of him just sitting in next to the season ticket holder. So it was great.
And Montero has slowed down a little bit from the beginning of the year. He had that in back as good, but he's still been about 5 or 6 points. So at 8.9, he's still not a bad pick for me. I also have Carl. I know New England has slowed down, but he's still been doing, and they're in the thick of a playoff race, so I don't have to worry about rotation. And I mean, Portland's been bad enough where I'm actually at this point starting to pick people. I have Pavone.
Yeah, that's good.
Again, maybe not as much for the RSL game in the beginning. That home game against Vancouver is. I have Atuesta for LAFC. LAFC have that home game against Houston midweek. That's a big game for me. I kind of, because something else we should have pointed out, if LAFC win that game, they will clinch supporters. So I kind of see LAFC going hard on that. Maybe a little bit more nervous about the game at Allianz Field, but I kind of feel like LAFC needs to recover some mojo, so I'm not as worried about rotation. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's just kind of my thoughts on that. And then I have Albert Rusnak. He's been really good at home. They have 2 home games, and they have 2 home games against terrible defensive teams. So I really like RSL attackers this week. I mean, I can only fit in Rusnak. I think you kind of have to have the 2 forwards this week, unless you're going to go differential. But yeah, I like Rusnak this week. 11 million is expensive, but not as expensive as 6 out.
Kyle.
Yeah, a lot of overlap there, I think. I got Rusnak. He was, I think, the first one. Double home game. Always does well, or maybe not always, but is Houston, who has been and then LA, who, I mean, you're going to have one good, one bad. So he was on the short list for sure. I think PT is probably worth the gamble this week. Just without the other Martinez there running the show, I think he has a chance to step up, and I'm not going to win this thing, so hey, why not at this point?
Have fun.
I'm doing okay in my personal league, which is the only one that I super care about. But so generally, I play it close to the vest, or I play conservatively. But I think in this context, it's worth the gamble because I think Atlanta has something to prove still too. I wish I had the money for Pavone, but I'm going budget for my LA Galaxy midfielder with Antuna. I hope that's a good play, but I don't know. That might change before tomorrow. And then Jackson Ewell is the other kind of budget option that I think has a good chance of putting up some decent bonus points.
Yeah, those are some good options right there. I'll throw out some other options. No faith in Morales, Mike?
The question from is one, I think losing Tinnerholm hurts him a little bit. For me, mostly it was a budget. It was either him or Heel. And my main concern is that he's been kind of on and off with hamstring injury. So if New York City wins that first, I don't expect to see him at Gillette.
It's rested.
That's my knock against Max Morales. I mean, if New York City draws that game, then yeah, he probably plays against Gillette because I think New York City really to skip that by, if for nothing else, so that they can avoid scheduling issues with the Yankees. But yeah, that's my kind of big concern against New York City in general this week. It's why I only have Miller on my team. Is that if New York City wins and then you have that next game again, that's just a recipe be for rotation, and Maxi would be the first one on the list because he's been kind of struggling in and out of injury. And New York City is going to absolutely want to get him.
Yeah, good tip. If you are looking for other options at Atlanta, I think Gressel is one to consider. He had a score really close to Pitty's this past week, and with different shifts there in the midfield, I think you have even more opportunities for Atlanta to try to share the ball around. So is it going to be Pitty? Is it going to be Villalba? Is it going to be Barco? Is it going to be somebody else? And I think that would get Gressel more involved, so he could be a little bit more of a value pick to go with if you're looking to save some money. I think Eriksson could be in the conversation. 2 home games. He's been a really good option at midfield, back and forth between Vaco more often than not Eriksson, and then missing some of like Wando could really lean to some of these guys. So 10.8, not a bad option. Pavone, I think, is a great pickup right there as well. You guys hit a lot of the ones that I've been considering. Rusnak as well. I think Medunjanin could be one you could look at as a defensive midfielder. 2 away games, he could see a lot of bonus points. But he's also has several games these past few weeks where he's been involved in assisting as well. So you might be able to get a shot at an assist during that, especially if Philadelphia does see the results go some of their way on the road that they're going to be hoping for. So I think there are several good midfield options. I may rework my back line to get some of those budget picks in there to go with the fantasy mullet this week and get more. But I think this is a great week to look at a lot of the heavy midfielders, and just a lot of a 5-man midfield I think could be really productive. I don't know about Carlos Heel. I've just been kind of worried about some of the New England production recently, but I've had him in and out of my team today when I was working on it. But otherwise, I think you guys have thrown out a lot of great options there. Let's move on to forwards. Oh, go ahead.
I have a quick question for Mike. What's the deal with Medina? Is he getting game time regularly right now? Should I be considering him at all for less than 7?
I mean, no. He's a clear substitute issue. I mean, he had that one, and then he started, and then that was it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he'd push enough, and especially with kind of returning health, I could see. Let me put it this way: if Medina starts, it would be in the second game, and it would be because New York City has clinched first overall, and they so you would probably get a Medina without a Maxi. I mean, what I would up top, is Matriza, Tadi Castle, and maybe Tajori. Or something. I don't see Medina getting the start.
We had a question.
Rotating.
We had a question about Gutierrez come in from the chat. We don't have Blaine to talk about Sporting Kansas City, but I'm worried about some rotations there coming near to the end. What about you guys? What do you think about a Sporting Kansas City midfielder as an option this week?
I mean, Gutierrez is a pretty solid one, but I think there are better ones, and I think like that. That's one of the teams it's pretty much done, so you could see some rotation. Also, I mean, they're missing, so I don't know. I think actually, Kyle put in chat one of the more interesting rotation issues, which is LA. I am kind of worried about LAFC. I mean, we talked about earlier. I'm wondering if they win Supporter Shield. I mean, they shouldn't, but then again, Bob Bradley's been kind of weird about rotations.
Yeah, it's hard to know what he's going to prioritize. But I mean, if I were him and Vela was coming off an injury and they clinch it at home against Houston, why would you put Vela on I mean, unless they still have charter flights left, I don't see him taking a commercial flight to Minneapolis, St. Paul, and then coming back just for effectively a pointless game, right? They've won the thing at that point. So the more I think about it, the more I'm wondering whether 16 million invested in Vela might be better value spread around. I don't know.
I mean, they should, because they need to kind of recapture some of their mojo. I mean, to me, Vela's already taken the top. But it's something that's plausible. It really depends on how much they really care about golden all-time records and all. Because I mean, like you said, if they win, and then they get to, then they would be at So
So if Zlatan
if
gets
they
a hat
blow
trick
off
on
again against
Wednesday,
Minnesota, then they have. What's that?
if Zlatan gets a hat trick on Wednesday, then Vela's definitely going to Minnesota. Is that the
Maybe.
is that the
But see,
reason?
I don't know the Vela C care.
Yeah,
You know.
probably not.
Well, I mean, you're already
It's
talking
an
about
interesting question.
Vela.
I don't know what to do about it.
You're already talking about Vela and the chances. Since we're going to talk about forwards, we'll just expand that. I do have some worry about rotations with LAFC. I mean, there is that balance of do we clinch supporter shield, but also keep Vela healthy is one thing that I think is going to be definitely on their mind. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Vela maybe not play both games. Like maybe he doesn't just play one game, but I mean if he only plays half of a second game or 30 minutes or comes in as like a late game sub in the first game, something like that. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Vela split some time this week. But what about Zlatan? Do you think his desire to push for a golden boot and just LA Galaxy get results is enough to make him like a lock for 180 minutes?
Yeah, I think he is because I don't think LA Galaxy is really in a position to clinch. I, that might be a conversation for. But I mean, I kind of see Zlatan playing, but not necessarily getting a result against R, which pretty much means he has to play against the White Caps, and probably means he has to play next week. I mean, there's just too much riding on the fact that they need to get a playoff spot and they haven't.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, even then, you're going to want to get home. Yeah, there's a lot of seeding issues there. It just makes me hard to imagine any of the teams from that 2 to 8 group rotating. It's not like New York
Phoning
City or
anything in,
LAFC
yeah.
with lock. There's a lot for all of them. I mean, even in Atlanta, you know, they're going to want to get as high of a seeding as unless they're just absolutely knocked out of it and just like, well, we just need to rest up the playoff. You know, most of these teams just have too much.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's talk about the forwards you are considering, Kyle.
Yeah, so I was going. This is where all my money is. My midfield's pretty weak, but right now I have Vela and Zlatan. I mean, they both are on double game weeks. They're both I think the highest scoring players in the game. So on one hand, it seems like a no-brainer. That wrinkle with Vela, the chance that he might get rotated for Minnesota makes me second guess most of my choices tonight. So we'll see what happens with that. But for now, those are the two I'm starting. And then for a budget option on my bench, I tend to, because I again mess up. It's user error in scheduling. I try to have a scrub on the starting 11 and then bench players that definitely will play. So in that vein, probably going to go with Johnson from RSL. I think Sam Johnson, and if not him, then probably Corey Baird. I like their matchups in Salt Lake.
Yeah,
so one of those two should be good for a good 8 points or so.
Mike.
Yeah, I also have Vela in my first team. I mean, I think that's probably going to be the consensus, just because of how many goals they've been, and they both have really good. I mean, and the question with Vela really is, if he gets rotated, is that game against Houston going to be enough? Houston's defense has been.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah.
You know, so I mean, the problem is you're not going to be able. Vela is rotated in that first game. Well, then yeah, get him the hell. But and hopefully you'll have enough time to pivot to some of the. I do like the Baird and Johnson picks. I'm kind of going to do some more research. But my third forward pick, if I did pivot away from Vela just to kind of spread some money around, I think I would go with Priz from the Philadelphia. Again, the Earthquakes having maybe kind of an odd pick. Do Quintero or Toy from as Sporting Kansas City is not going to have. So we kind of know the defensive issues they've been having. And then if you think LAFC is going to rotate that game, Minnesota is kind of the team. So that's kind of a interesting differential pick to kind of think.
Well, I have to say, I currently have a team that does not have Vela in it.
What?
I know. I
Egad.
know. I built a team without Vela. I have Zlatan in there. I have Shabilko from Philadelphia in there already. He is on the road, but San Jose could allow some. But there's also that Columbus game that I was really thinking about right there, and he's on good form. That's where I was thinking that maybe he might be able to get one through San Jose. We'll see. Which he's on my bench as a switcheroo because I'm kind of hoping that we'll see if that switcheroo or keeperoo works out. But then I had Matrita as well as an option, but. I like what you guys are saying about RSL as some options there as well with their form and seeing who they have. So I think I'd rethink that. But I don't know. I'm just not sold on Vela this week. Throwing it to you, chat, already to see what you guys think about. Do you think Vela rotates? But I don't know. I'm just not sold. I don't know if there will be some rest or some split time because wanting to make sure he's ready to go. But you're bound, and I think they did mention this best on Extra Time Radio when they were talking about who was going to be in that Golden Boot race, and there was a thought that Vela is the most team focused player. So Zlatan's in it for him, wants to get that Golden Boot. Joseph also the same way, that if there was of those three players the one that it may mean the least to, maybe it's Vela. Now, I mean, you always want awards and trophies and recognition for the stuff that you do, but I could see that from what I've heard about Vela throughout the year that might not be on the front of his mind of something he has to get when put up against his team getting trophies. So currently I have a Vela less team, but I will be keeping an eye out on chats and keeping an eye up on lineups as well before I make that final decision myself.
So I got a couple of other players to shout out there in the vein of Eric Miller. Some options to consider both at midfield and forward. Emerson Heinemann, I think, played really well. He's been getting 90 minutes in the last couple of months or weeks on Atlanta, and with Martinez out, I feel like he's probably the next person up when they rejigger everything. I don't know enough. We'll certainly subject to check when the lineups drop. But he's only 5.2. And then, Diamande checked himself into the substance abuse and mental health program, which kudos to him. I think that's a hard decision, and I hope he's doing well. The fantasy upshot might mean that Christian Ramirez gets some more playing time, potentially. And especially, I'm wrong. Okay, who should I be
Well,
looking
because
at?
he's not there anymore. He's with the Houston Dynamo now.
Ramirez? You're right. I am wrong. Look at that. His picture's all right. Well, good thing I'm tuning into this.
The jerseys don't change.
This episode.
The jerseys don't change, and it throws you
the
off.
pictures don't, but the teams do. Yeah, you're right. So who is up then? If Diamande is gone, then who's next in line to get minutes?
Nano says Rodriguez, and I think I for time as well.
Okay. Well, that's embarrassing, but I'm glad I'm listening.
No,
to this.
hey, it happens.
But yeah, there's an opportunity there. Shot. So maybe that's something that'll find your way.
All right, well, that just leaves one more question. Who is going to be your captain? Michael.
Right now, I'm going with the truism to always captain Vela.
Kyle.
I almost feel like captaining him feeds his ego, so I feel kind of gross doing it every time. But I'm probably going to go Zlatan because he's more of a lock for 180 than Vela is.
I have it on Zlatan as well myself, and I love how I don't even have to hear the answer for my notes. Like Mike's like, I'm just gonna go with the usual, and I'm like Vela, and then Kyle, you're like, I think it feeds his ego. I'm like Zlatan. He's going with Zlatan. Right there it is. So no, I'm going with Zlatan myself. I think that Vancouver game is juicy, and I think getting the Golden Boot means a lot more to him than anybody else. So I think he'll be driven to to get that. Any final questions from chat for our recording before we go to plugs? We'll, of course, hang around a little bit afterwards to keep answering questions. Those of you listening, we do this every Monday around 9:30 Eastern Standard Time, so please do join us. We'll have one more competitive podcast for this season, and then we'll do a wrap-up podcast as well. So let's move into plugs. Mike?
Nothing.
Kyle, what about you?
Not too much. I'm kind of, if there are a lot of Sounders fans listening to this, I am interested in starting a more local fantasy setup. So find me on Discord. My @ is Ace Starflyer, like a made-up Star Wars character that doesn't exist. And maybe we can set something up for next season. This is my chance to make that happen. All of my friends from the season ticket holders, most of the people who started that league have since moved. So it's just me and a few guys around here in Seattle. So I'd like to rebuild that community if I can. So find me on Discord. Thanks.
Yeah, awesome. Do it. And as for myself, you can check out everything over at MLSFantasyBoss.com. You can check out what's left of my weekly fantasy newsletter from MLSsoccer.com. And check out the Discord, as Kyle mentioned. Check out the Reddit subreddit community. And it's a great community to be a part of. Kyle did such a great job talking about it. And everybody is super helpful, and chat is always super fun. So please do check it out. It's been a great season so far. We're not finished yet, so let's finish strong. Thank you very much, and good luck. All right. And there is the podcast. So we'll keep streaming a little bit longer as we go over here to chat. Guys, any other questions, guys and gals? Any other questions that you have for this round that we haven't covered yet? Throw it out here. And while we're waiting for that, did you have fun, Kyle?
Yeah, would do again. Thanks so much for this.
Nice.
I can't believe I didn't know that Christian Ramirez moved. What the hell? But beyond that, that's embarrassing. I'm like, yeah, I might know things, but no, I don't know things. So now that the podcast is done, don't listen to anything I say. Good.
I mean, to be fair, I literally listened to them discuss. I think Extra Time Radio was like, "Oh, but Christian Ramirez would take their place, except he's not there anymore." So whenever he said it, I was like, "No, I heard this."
I think really I stopped that. I was listening to that exact podcast this afternoon, and then stopped it to like pull together this microphone and all this crap. And yeah, so maybe that I'm gonna blame that on not finishing my read.
So are you moving?
Yeah, we're so I live in Tacoma now, which is one of the reasons why the season tickets thing is starting to dissipate. Driving an hour in traffic is less appealing than walking down the street to see a match. Although the Tacoma Defiance is super fun, highly recommended. Your local USL affiliate. But yeah, we're just moving down the street. My wife and I. Well, she's pregnant, and hence we're pregnant. I'm very excited. Hey, thanks. It's our first video that I'm doing. So of course, 2 months before. When else would you move? So should be great.
That's you and Blaine getting it all moving around. That'll work. Yeah, that's awesome. I hope you can get. So you're trying to get like just a league going for fantasy, or you're trying to start a little local fantasy chit chat going on there, or what's going on?
I mean, ideally both. I mean, I really like the like hanging out on the Discord with watching games. It'd be fun to do that with other people as well, like both physically and digitally. That's a dream. We'll see what happens. But really getting into this thing, right? Like I said earlier, was it was mostly a friends thing, and that got me involved. And now it's kind of grown from there. But I'd like to reestablish this as a thing that I do with people that I know on a personal basis.
Andrew
the online community is cool too.
Andrew Crawlard is in that community, and I know Brian from MLS Show. He's in the military, and he just recently moved to the Seattle area. I think he's an LA Galaxy fan. So if you can tolerate
we
Galaxy,
can't all be perfect.
Tyler's a Seattle, but I think he might be down in San Diego actually now.
Huh.
Yeah, I was trying to think of where he is.
Why do so many people from Seattle move? What's going on? And my coworkers
have you
used to live in
seen rents
Seattle.
in Seattle?
No, but I have seen on like the shows where it's like Flip or Flop or whatever it is, people going around. It's like, he's an electrician, she's a waitress. Their budget's $5.3 million. Let's see what they can get. So that kind of thing. Slight exaggeration there, but
only vaguely. Yeah. It's crazy. It's crazy. I mean, especially in Seattle. My wife's family is in the San Jose area, and that place is absolutely insane. I don't know how people
really
afford both a roof and bread at the same time. Yeah, but Tacoma's pretty cool. Yeah, a lot of friends. It's a bit of a transient city, like most big urban areas, like New York City. People don't stay too long unless they're there forever. I think it's a similar vibe in Seattle. So.
And JoJo, I Minnesota defense. I just wish I could afford it.
Yeah, I like Metanair.
Yeah.
I think he's the one I like the best just because of his offensive tendencies. But I mean, Opara is always great for bonus points.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? We should have done brought to you by. Did you hear that? This Opara had to be sucked off at halftime because Adrian Heath was like, yeah, he's got like the diarrhea.
No, I did not hear that.
That's amazing.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, apparently there's been a stomach bug going around the room.
That's unfortunate. What would the pun be? I mean, Icopara dietary supplements. You can get the runs for 90 minutes. Well, there's something there. There's a runs joke, and I'm not finding it.
Let's see. Brought to you by Pepto-Bismol, keeping your defenders on the field. Something like that.
Save a sub. Take this.
Brought to you by the Vinny and Sal podcast, now sponsored by Pepto-Bismol.
Yeah, there you go. Featuring.
Brought to you by Bubble Gut.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. This is going nowhere quickly. What's going on? This is nuts. JoJo coming in with bringing us back on the topic. Also, New York City defense, thinking about Matrita because he plays attacking sometimes, but I think they might rotate. Is Miller still your favorite?
Well, I mean, Moderita is probably a better player. I mean, but Moderita particularly is if they, I wouldn't be surprised to see Ben Sweat actually. So that's my kind of only concern. And I mean, the other thing is do you think they keep a clean sheet against, even without Joseph? That's what I'm not as certain.
I mean, I worry about that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I could see them at least. And I don't know that Moderita, even though he's not getting the fantasy points for it as you. Because it's generally been pinging around. He hasn't been getting direct. He's been more just getting up there and causing. It's not like Tinnerholm, whereas Tinnerholm has been getting assists and maybe the occasion. I think Moderita maybe is more. He's gotten closer. Of course, now that I say that, he'll score the. Which.
Or if he plays up in midfield. That's what JoJo.
What's that?
JoJo said he played up in midfield last week.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, they Dome will do weird stuff, and I mean, also last game started.
Do weird stuff.
He'll just mess around with formations. I mean, it's one of the reasons that he's been doing is that Dome has been very flexible in doing changing up what they're doing mid. So, Moderita can be playing more forward, but regardless whether Moderita is playing wing back or moving more forward, he's not getting enough offensive bonus points. So, to me, that doesn't change his fantasy value.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
So I'm wondering. So do you guys have any thoughts? It's a budget question. Should I take Manone, or I think for a million more I could do a switcheroo with Bingham into Vega if needed.
I mean that Bingham option is pretty good.
Personally, I would just do Manone. I know Bingham is the stats guy, but I think Minoni has a better shot at 2.
Yeah, and I guess that's what it comes down to. Minone, if you're hoping for points off both games, because I mean, again, if you're thinking LA might rotate,
even though
the advantage there is I can then put a Minnesota player. Grey Goose was on my short list in the midfield, and but I don't have the earlier I didn't have the player for it for Minnesota. So I mean, if I switched out of Minone, then I could do Grey Goose and maybe who's Toy? Who's the forward that's kicking ass?
Yeah.
Toy's been doing that. Yeah.
He might be a better scrub than Johnson on my, or lottery ticket on the bench kind of thing.
Yeah, because has RSL figured out which of those guys is playing consistent?
They figured out how to get their superstar on the field with Toy at the same time. Quintero.
No, I was talking about with RSL with Baird.
Oh, with Baird and
I think
Johnson,
I think Minnesota's been playing Toy pretty consistent.
Okay.
Yeah, see, Baird was an unused sub at San Jose, was a sub at Minnesota, and then played 90. So I guess Johnson is the preferred starter. Johnson also didn't play against San Jose, and then was subbed out after 82.
Yeah.
But he still seems to cycle in and out as a sub.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. Yeah, Toy is probably a better bet. I'll see if I might end. I'm probably gonna end up scrubbing Vela. That's just so much money.
I mean, that's a lot of why I did it. Yeah.
And the thing for me is like, I'm not gonna win anything this year either, so I might as well just kind of go crazy. And that's what I'm trying to figure out if like people, the consensus pick is just because if I using that money would help my backlines.
Yeah. That's an interesting point.
And then I could convert that into like keep a triple switch with or a double auto route. Just in case change.
Triple double.
A double auto route. There's no such thing as a triple switch route. With
I've listened to the intro. I've heard this before.
Yeah, we need to change that because it is like sort of technically possible.
To see what it's like next year, what the rules are.
We'll see.
All right. Well, I think we're winding down. Thanks everyone for joining us tonight in live chat. Thank you so much, Kyle, for being here. I had a blast. Good luck on your move and everything. Fun. Yeah. So
if you ever, I'm available. My agent is not doing his job, I think. But feel free to contact me if you need another sub in anytime.
Yeah, we'll keep you in mind. Thank you so much.
Yeah, definitely.
All right.
Shameless plug to join the podcast.
Yeah, no, not a problem. I'm going to stop the streaming. So thanks a lot, guys.